Hi, this is Brad Carlton. Welcome to Ear Training Volume 2. We're going to continue our study with diatonic triads, and we'll actually be playing a number of common building blocks for progressions. I'll quiz you, I'll play something, and you'll have to figure out what I played. It won't be too rough. And then I'll also explain the theory behind it, how you have different options, playing tips, and you'll learn a lot about rhythm in this particular volume. So grab your guitar and let's work on some ear training. All right, I want you to play this, figure out what I'm playing, but I also want you to figure out the rhythm. All right, what I played was a 4-1 in the key of B. And what was the time signature? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to be interspersing rhythm. It's very important that you not only discern what chords you're playing, but what's the rhythm supposed to be. That's a 4-1 in the key of B. Now, on closer examination, there's another possibility. If we change the way we listen to it, meaning this. Now, I just gave you another piece of the puzzle. Indeed, if I go from E to B, looking at chart number 1, and also just looking at the major scale, I go down 4, 3, 2, 1. I hear it as a 4-1 because I know the 4 is a major, the 1 is a major. Now, I've only given you 2 pieces of the puzzle, but it's ambiguous. That could also be a 1-5 in the key of E. And what I did is I gave you the A chord, which was the missing piece of the puzzle, if I wanted it to be in the key of E. If I go like this, you hear it as the key of B because that seems like home base. Now listen. Now you hear E as home base. And if I don't play the A, it could be either way. But if I play the A chord, clearly I could only be in the key of E because E would be the 1, B would be the 5, A would be the 4. Another one of those ambiguous situations. We've covered the 1, 4, and 5 and a lot of connections, possibilities with those. They're great building blocks, nice bright major tonality. So let's look at all of the diatonic triads. Look at chart number 1. And let's just take the key of G, for example. That's your second key down the chart. Key of G has 1 sharp. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. When you're going through your sharp keys, if you know anything about the circle of fifths, you're always adding a new sharp on the 7th step of the scale, and you retain your previous sharps. The notes, as I said, G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, and so on. You already know from your past studies that the 1, 4, and 5 would be major chords. Now, we're not going to deal with the 7 chord. That would be an F-sharp diminished triad. Trust me on that. Doesn't stand on its own as a chord very well. That leaves us 3 remaining scale degrees. The 2, the 3, and the 6. We're going to be running through some progressions now where we insert minor chords along with major chords, or maybe just some minor chords. You've got to be able to hear the difference between majors and minors. So make sure that you can hear the difference. Now, the problem with that is if you're all by yourself and you play a chord, you know what you played because you chose to play a major, you chose to play a minor. So I'm going to go back to that little practice technique of where you might want to record yourself playing a couple different chords. And then don't write down what you played. Play some majors, play some minors, mix it up. 2 or 3 days later, play that thing back and determine was it major or minor. Without the guitar in your hand, just listen for that quality. Remember, the major chord is kind of neutral, kind of bright and happy, whereas a minor would be a darker, more melancholy sound. I'm going to assume that you can hear the difference now between a major and a minor. So if you've done your homework, we can proceed forward. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play these diatonic triads. You're playing guitar, you're sitting across from me right now, you want to learn how to play these diatonic triads. There are a number of different layouts. Let's do it all on one string. Now certain keys will lend themselves to that. So let's take the key of G. There's my one chord, and it's major. I move up a whole step because I know 1 and 2 are a whole step apart, but I have to change it to a minor, so that would be my 2 chord. I move up another whole step. That's my 3 chord. I know the 3 chord is minor. So see how we have these notes? Remember when we talked about the major scale along the string axis? So you're just building chords off of that. There's your 3 minor. Let's go to the 4. Well, I know that 3 and 4 are a half step apart. You can see that on your chart, number 1. There's my 4 major. So let's play that much. And I suggest you just work on working your way up and down through the major scale diatonic triads. Also run down. And if you're listening, you hear 4, 3, 2, 1, or going up 1, 2, 3, 4. Get those 4 notes squared away. Then you're going to have the 5 and the 6, major and minor. So let's have you do a little quiz right now. I'm going to play something for you, and you have to tell me what key it is. I'm just going to go up and then back down through a couple of different keys, and you figure out what key I'm playing in. All right, what key am I in now? Figure that one out for me. So you're like, wait a minute, that's a lot of stuff right away. But did you hear? All I want you to really focus on is, did you hear the major scale starting on this pitch? I just went up the scale, and what note did I start on? Well, you've determined from previous lessons how to find that note. And could you hear that it was major, minor, minor, major, major, minor? I'm simply going up from 1 all the way up through 6, and that's just the diatonic triads. If I had done it in reverse, it would be the same idea. You're just using scalar motion. For example, let's say I had played this. Can you hear how I'm just descending from 6 down to 1? Spend some time singing 1 up to 6, 6 down to 1, and then play along with associating the right major and minor chords. 1, 4, and 5 are major, 2, 3, and 6 are minor. And just do it in the keys that are accessible, like the key of F, the key of G. The key of A is going to get a little jammed up. So what are we going to do about when we get into some of these other keys? Well, I'm going to talk about laying chords out for you on the guitar. You've got your 6th and your 5th string root bar chords, right? There are a lot of different ways you could lay this out, but let's just look at a consolidated area where we put 3 notes on each of the strings. Let's say I'm in the key of G. I can play the 1, the 2, and the 3, all off the 6th string root. Then I can go over to the 5th string root and play a major, major, minor. So that gives me access within a small range, I don't have to cover a lot of fretboard, of getting all of my chords, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that would serve me in a lot of keys. I could even the key of C. I have access. Now in the key of D, it's going to get a little jammed up, so you can flip it around and use the 5th string root for the 1, 2, and 3 chords, and then you use the 6th string root for your 4, 5, and your 6 chords. What I'm going to show you right now are the 2 baseline layouts, 3 notes per string, that'll give you access to these 6 diatonic chords with comfort in any key. If you're starting on the 6th string, the 1, 2, and 3 will be on the 6th string, a whole step apart. Then you go over in the same fret as you had your index finger. That's your 4, 5, and 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then if I happen to start on the 5th string root, it just reverses. 1, 2, and 3 will be on the 5th string. Then I go down a whole step, or down 2 frets rather, and go to the 6th string. And I'll show you a little trick about this. When you did it off the 6th string, look what you had. 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6. So there's your 1 and your 4. That's a perfect 4th interval, right? The same thing would hold true if I was in the key of C and I started on the 5th string, right? I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember, the pattern wouldn't change because those strings are still tuned 5 frets apart. But what I need to do, because I'm restricted to 6th and 5th string root bar chords, because I want a nice low bass note, instead of doing this, and instead of going to 4th string root forms, I go down an octave, because you know your octave shapes. You've got a chart that shows you that. So can you see how I'm simply doing this? Instead of going 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6 up there, I play the 4, 5, 6 down an octave. Therefore, this is a review. And don't just get these under the fingers. Make sure you know what numbers you're playing, because that's the beauty of the number system and the beauty of our instrument. We get a pattern, it stays the same, doesn't matter where you're playing. I'm going to review one more time for you. If your 1 chord is going to be oriented on the 6th string, you'd use the following layout for accessing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you're going to use the 5th string for your locator for your 1 chord, pretty easy, huh? Why not use patterns to get you up and running? Obviously, the more you learn, you'll be free to play it any way you choose. But I need to give you some tools that'll give you access to those 6 diatonic triads. I'm going to give you a quiz right now, and there are going to be 2 components. You have to determine what chords I'm playing, and also I want you to listen to the rhythm. You got to determine how the chords are moving rhythmically. How many different chords did you hear? If you said 6, well, you're not even in the game. If you said 5 or 4 or 3, you weren't listening. How many different chords did you hear? If you said 2, okay, now we can proceed forward. And were the chords moving in an upward manner, coming from the original home bass chord, or did it go down? If you said, well, it went up, okay, we're doing pretty well here. How far did it go up? And how would you determine that? And what was the quality of the first chord? These are all questions you have to, if you don't immediately know them just from listening, and you're just getting your ears on, you want to train your ears, these are the questions to help you figure things out. Was this first chord major or minor? Right now I'm listening to what I played. Can you remember what I just played? Can you get that sound? It was a major, wasn't it? And you had to find where that root was, so if you came up with B flat, okay, we're 50% there. Then, if you heard that it went up, you have to determine how far did it go up. And what do we use as our ruler? We're going to use the major scale. So if this is 1, because I'm going to assume it's a 1 chord, it's major. It could be 4 or 5, right? Well, hold on, we're going to talk about that. If I play this chord, I hear a major, then I hear this. Let's assume you don't see what I'm doing right now. Okay, I hear that it went up, and I also hear, in a snapshot way, oh, now it's a minor chord. This is training your ears, you know, because you've got to discern that this is a major, it's its own entity, and then that's a minor. Okay, so we have a major chord, and then how far up is the minor? Well, I go 1, 2, okay. So what do we have here? We have a 1-2 progression in the key of B flat. Now, there's more to this, because this could also be in another key. I'm going to talk about that a little later. But I also said that I wanted you to get the rhythm squared away. What was the groove that I was playing? When we talk about the groove, what do we mean? Well, the tempo was 1, 2, 3. I was going. I want you to mute the strings and do what I'm doing with my right hand. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. And. So when you're tapping your foot, you smack 3 strings, 3 or 4. And then when your foot's up, you just play the 6th string. You're muting the strings. You also have a palm mute. That gives me 1 and 2 and 3. It's as if I'm playing drums and I'm doing 4 on the floor with the kick drum going thump, 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 thump. And then I've got the hi going. There's an accent on the number and the and's a little lighter. So you want to emulate the drums. Let's get this up to speed. And then I simply went. Okay, what am I playing when I go to that C minor? Meaning technically, watch my picking hand. Notice I played an upstroke. That's because I wanted this to sound like an open hi-hat. So when it opens up, I need a different sound. The upstroke's going to bring out the high voices in that chord. All the rest of the strokes were downstrokes. Now, I don't know if I've ever used this story. I tell my students this frequently. I think I've done it in videos, but I'm going to give it to you again. All right, so each of us, it's a one-on-one thing. So let's say your name is Joe or Mary or whatever, and you come into $100 million. I come into $100 million. You go out and you buy a beautiful sailboat. And you're down here in Florida, and so, oh, it's a lovely place to sail when the weather's great, right? It's always nice. And I go out and I get a big old cigarette boat that's loud and flashy, and it drinks gas, and it's fast. So we're both in the intercoastal waterway where you're limited to a 5-knot speed. You can't go faster because you got seawalls and residences. Is there a different vibe on your vessel than on mine? Your sailboat is relaxed and serene, whereas my cigarette boat is like a racehorse wanting to jump out of the gate. I use that analogy because for guitarists, we have the sailboat and then we have the cigarette boat. I'm still playing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So those are the two approaches for your picking. Consecutive downstrokes for a driving sound, down-up strokes for a more relaxed feel. And you can intersperse them any way you want, but that's important because we're not just talking about the rhythm, we're talking about the feel, all those nuances of rhythm. Ear training is not just about pitch and chords, it's also about rhythm. And I encourage you, I'm all about rhythm, and that's one of the glaring weaknesses. I've been teaching almost 50 years, and that's always one of the glaring weaknesses. I've rarely had a student come in who was super sharp on their rhythm. I think one reason is because they don't start with drums. I start with drums, I always think drums. And you know, they don't realize that this functions as a drum. And I've said that in many of my courses, and I'll continue to say it, because that's your foundation. If I wasn't playing in a nice solid groove, it wouldn't be music. All right, so I've given you some ideas of how to play this. And you know, I told you a few minutes ago, I said, well, I'm giving you two pieces of the puzzle, right? You have a major chord and a minor chord a whole step higher. I want you to look at chart number 1 and go to the key of B flat. And indeed, the B flat is the 1 chord and the C minor is the 2 chord. But then I want you to go to the key of E flat. In the key of E flat isn't B flat the 5 chord, that's a major chord, and C minor would be the 6 chord. So do you see that there are two possible keys that you could be in? When you hear a major chord and a minor chord a whole step higher, it could be a 1-2 or it could be a 5-6. How would you determine that? Well, you get some more pieces of the puzzle with any other chords that are punctuated in, or perhaps a melody line or something else that gives you a clear picture. But there are these ambiguous situations where you could be in either or both keys, and sometimes you don't really pin it down because you leave a certain note out when you're soloing. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I just want to keep this basic ear training here, but know your options. So how do you know your options? By understanding chart number 1. All right, figure this one out. You're right away saying, wait a minute. you didn't just play one chord and then another chord. You played a whole bunch of other stuff, these fills and these bass lines. But that's superfluous. It doesn't matter because harmonically, what's going on, and rhythmically. I played 2 chords and I was in a particular groove. What did you come up with? If you came up with E minor and D, then I played a bunch of stuff. Don't worry about all the other stuff I played. I'm kind of doing that to help you to look through the forest to see specific trees, meaning chords. The forest is all that other stuff that's going on, fills, bass lines, things like that. What's the feel on this? Remember, we're going to be talking about rhythm. What was the feel? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So we're back to those straight 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and what was my picking scheme? What did you just hear? You're supposed to say, you hit the buzzer, and you say, wait a minute, Brad, that wasn't the right chord right there. Did you hear a major instead of a minor? Now, I've been known to do that, to try to trip people up. You should have heard that instantly, say, wait a minute, something's different. He didn't play what was the question. He didn't play what he just played a minute ago. So make sure you hear that difference between majors and minors, because those are your keys. Those are the clues. Look at my right hand. Okay, but a minute ago you talked about the cigarette boat and the sailboat. This thing sounds kind of relaxed, but you're using all those consecutive downstrokes, and you said that that gives you this drive and rock sound. What's sounding different right now compared to... It's called legato versus staccato. If I just let everything ring, isn't it rather relaxed? But if I go... And it's also that palm mute in it. So, as a guitarist, make sure you know the difference between legato, which means everything's long and connected, smooth, things ring as long as possible, or staccato. Know your palm mute. Those are all the tools that you could take the same exact part with the same picking scheme and change how it sounds. And what key am I in? So I have a minor chord and a major chord a whole step lower. What's that going to be? It's a 2-1, right? What else could it be? Remember how I explained the previous lesson? I said, well, you also have a minor chord on the 6th step of the scale and a major on the 5th. So that could be a 6-5. When you listen to it, trust your ears. What do you hear? Because of what you hear. But listen, I'm going to throw another chord in. Do you hear how now it changed its meaning? Its character changed, because clearly now I'm playing a 6-5 form in the key of G. But if I just hear it as these 2 chords, odds are I'm going to think it's in the key of D until I get another clue. You got to be a little sonic detective here. When you're playing a piece of music, listen for those clues that'll pin down what key you're truly in. And remember, the key can change in the course of the song. Jazz tunes can change keys every 2 beats, every beat for that matter. So don't think it has to stay rigidly in one key. There's a lot here. I'm just trying to show you the big picture. Okay, figured this one out. All right, what did I play? What'd you come up with? I can't hear you. Speak a little louder. G and A minor, right? Let's look at how I'm playing it. What feel do I have? Again, straight 8s. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you notice what I'm doing? You hear the drum kit. kick drum, snare. Back and forth. Palm mute on the bottom end. Kind of that Motown feel. It's real important. Straight feel. What other key could I be in? Could be in the key of C. It's a 2-1 in the key of G, or it's a 5-6 in the key of C. I'll give you a clue to help you hear it in the key of C. But we're still in this ambiguous situation. Because yes, if I want to think of it in the key of G, I have 1, 2, and there's my 4. But I could also be in the key of C and see it as 5, 6, 1. This is where the duration of the chord affects how you hear it, the way it's presented. Listen to this. The thing still sounds like it's in the key of G, even though I stayed on the C for quite a while. I need another piece of the puzzle to clearly pin it down that it's in the key of C. So I might do this. Do you hear what I'm doing? There's my 5 and my 6 in the key of C, the G and the A minor. Then I'll throw in a 4, which is the F, and then the C is the 1. So now you hear it. A big secret are those 2 major chords. We're going to cover those in a little while. The 4 and the 5, we actually did last month. But you hear what that does. It really helps you hear the other keys. So keep your ears open and know your possibilities. You only got 2 possibilities, so it's not too big. Okay, figure this one out. What'd you come up with? Did you come up with D minor and C? Okay. But the rhythmic feel has changed. Instead of playing a straight 8th feel, we're playing shuffle 8s. 1, 2. You could play them. The down-up strokes, you could do that, but it's not quite as tight as all those down strokes. Know your options. And what are we looking at this as? Could it be a 6-5 in the key of F? Yes. But could it also be a 2-1 in the key of C? Notice what I just did. This is how you could write progression, a pop progression. You're starting with this building block, these bichordal vamps, where you have 2 different chords, and you're vamping between them, but you want to insert another chord to pin down a particular key. Then look at all those 6 chords. I've already talked about how to see those on the guitar. And do you see it's important for you to practice it, this little building block, and add another chord to it, 1 chord that will define which key. But in some cases, you might play a chord that would be straddling both keys. We had that happen a couple lessons ago. So make sure you play around with this stuff. That's how you're going to get creative. I don't want you just to learn stuff. I want you to be able to play music and be creative. All right, here we go. Figure this one out. What is that? A little quicker tempo, sounded jazzy. What was the rhythmic feel? We're going to start with the rhythmic feel instead of just the chords. What am I doing right now? No different than if I want to sing the scale to determine my pitch levels. I'm going to sing the rhythm. ta, 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 tap my foot, ta, ta, ta. I got to count it. Ta, ta, 1, 2, 3, 4. Shuffle eights. Jazz fields are always that way. Ta, 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 ta. Okay, so I know that it's a shuffle eight feel. Here's my tempo. I'm just going to sing the rhythm. Even if you don't know how to count it, you can go da 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 da. And notice I'm singing just like a big band, throwing horn punches in. What chords did you come up with? What did you hear in terms of major and minor? Did you hear a minor chord as the lower of the two chords and then another minor chord as the higher of the two chords? If that's what you heard, then where's the only place in the major scale where you could have two minor chords close like that? 2 and 3. This is one of those bichordal vamps that can only be in one key. Any two minor chords, here's just a principle right now. Any two minor chords a whole step apart have to be a 2 and a 3 from low to high. Then what key am I in theoretically? The key of F. And if I wanted to hear that, because you might not say, well, it sounds like I'm in G minor. Well, that's the street key. Theoretically, you're in the key of F, and all the information that exists in the key of F, then you think of it as G Dorian, A Aeolian, A Phrygian, but that's all based on the prevailing chord. But you always want to know what major scale you're in. It's very, very important because we're basing all this theory off the major scale. So what I might do is slow it down and go, you see what I said? I went 2, 3, 4, 5, and then back to the 1. Now you say, yeah, that little building block of the G minor to the A minor, that's in the key of F, because now I hear it in that string of chords. Then when you just hear, little sidebar, if you want to solo over this, any of these progressions, you just go to that major scale that you're in and just use your ears. I'm not going to bog you down with arpeggios and modes and all that stuff. Just record the chord vamp, the bichordal vamp, or however many you've got in the vamp, and blow over it with the major scale. Pretty much everybody knows how to play a major scale on the guitar. If you don't, that's not too hard. I think I already showed you one. And use your ears. Don't think, use your ears. If you hit a note that's weak, move up or down one note in the scale. And don't try to play a zillion notes. Don't try to sound like you're playing a scale. This is your ear training for melody. Hop around and ultimately sing what you play so you can play what you sing. And that way, you get up and running with your soloing, and you'll be freer. You won't have this fear factor of, oh, I'm going to hit a wrong note, or I don't know what the chords are. Just jump in. Worst thing can happen is you hit a weak note, because everything we're doing resides in the major scale. As long as you stay in the major scale, you'll be in the game. You may not hit a home run, but you're in the game. What'd you come up with? What did you hear? And what feel was it? Well, obviously I was playing a reggae feel. Is that a straight eighth or a shuffle eighth feel? Was I going da 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 da? It sounded like some 50s song if I did that. Because it was a shuffle feel, sounded like a reggae groove. I played two minor chords a whole step apart, high to low. It's sort of a strange sound. It's a little different what you'd normally hear. It has to be what? If you just replied, it has to be a 3-2, then you're learning something. And if it's a 3-2, oh, well, I know that because Carlton showed me that I could play a major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I happen to be on 3 and 2, oh, so 1, 2, and 3 are all on the 6th string with this layout. Therefore, if I go 3, 2, there's my 1. Oh, I'm in the key of A flat. And I don't even need to play anything. I can just look at the neck and say, oh, I don't have to point. I yell at my students all the time. They want to touch, I yell at them, literally. I say, don't touch the guitar. Don't touch it. Because you want your eyes to do the work. If I see, I'll do this just to point it to help you out. There's my 3, there's my 2, there's my 1, so that's 4, 5, and 6, because remember what I showed you about that major scale layout, 3 notes per string, where the 1 is on the 6th string. And this will just help you because you'll start to see these intervals. By the way, 3 and 2 are a whole step apart, 2 and 1 are a whole step apart, and that helps me hear the key. And then what scale would I use for blowing over that? The A flat major scale. Okay, this is one of the most common sounds that you'll hear in music. Figure it out. First off, what was the feel? 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. So I'm in 4/4 using a triplet feel, or I can think of it as 12/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sounds like what a blues would be in, a slow blues, but also sounds like a ballad, the 60s kinds of things, that whole R&B soul feel. And what did you hear in terms of chords? Did you hear a major chord and then a minor chord that was below it, lower in pitch? And the distance was a little bit greater. I played C and then A minor. So I was playing a 1/6 in the key of C. Make sure you learn that. That is a building block for bigger progressions, which we will get into. It's very important you hear it. And one of the reasons why it sounds so smooth, I'm going to give you some theory here. Let's go to the key of C. When you look at chart number 1, you see it goes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Then I want you to think of it just running up another octave. It just repeats. If I play the 1 chord, the triad, it's every other note, C, E, G. That'd be the 3 notes that are in a C chord. So I could call it the 1 chord, but I could also call it the 8 chord, because 8 is the octave of 1. So if you visualize it in the 2nd octave, you say, okay, I see C, E, G, every other note. And if I go down a third and go down to A, which is the 6th scale degree, I have an A minor chord. Well, it's spelled A-C-E, so there's another principle here. Any 2 triads that are a third apart will share 2 common tones. Watch what I'm going to show you, and I'm going to do this. Here's every other note, C, E, G, that's a C chord. And if I move each note up to the next note in the scale, I get D, F, A. So a C chord and a D minor have no common tones. So here's another principle, any 2 adjacent or neighbor diatonic triads will never have common tones. But if I play every other chord, can you see what happens? C, E, G is the C chord, D, F, A is the D minor, E, G, B would be the E minor chord. Oh, so whether I go up a third or down a third, and I'm playing triads, I'll always have 3 common tones. The reason I'm explaining that to you is that when you play the chords, you'll utilize those common tones to keep the change real smooth, but that's also why it sounds so smooth. All you're doing is just changing 1 note. You've got 2 common tones. Theory is important. Make sure you don't neglect this study of theory. It can be a little overwhelming, but trust me, the payoff down the road, years and years down the road, are tremendous, because then you know what you're doing and you can see all your options, you can categorize things. I sound like a salesman, but you know, when you teach music, you got to sell people on some ideas. I'm going to play a little vamp that's a little more intricate, and the reason I'm setting it up this way is that I want you to disregard the chord in the middle. You'll see what I mean. Find those. All right, the first thing I want to talk about is the groove. Sounded like a dance song, like a funk thing, didn't it? Here's my tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2. So watch what I'm going to do. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Those are sixteenths, straight sixteenths. I told you to disregard the middle chord, and I'll talk to you why. I'll tell you why in just a minute. Did you hear a minor chord? I'm going to leave it out, actually. Watch what I'm going to do. Can you hear a minor chord? That's our home bass, or so it seems. And then, well, now that sounds like it could be home bass. It's one of those situations where either one of the chords could be your street key. What am I playing? B flat minor and D flat. Look at chart number 1. Go down the 6th column until you see a B flat, and that'll be a minor chord because it's a 6. So you're in the key of D flat. And I told you to disregard that little connector that I was putting in there. Well, if I'm on 6 and I'm heading up to 1, I can think of 1 as 8. They're the same thing, right? Because 8's the octave of 1. So I'm asking you a very tough question right now. Not too many people get this right. What number is between 6 and 8? And if you said something other than 7, man, your brain dead. So the 7th would be the connector in terms of the bass line between a 6 and a 1 or an 8, right? So I go to that 7, but you're like, wait a minute, you said that we weren't even going to talk about the chord that's built off the 7th step of the scale. And I'm not going to lie. No, we're not going to talk about that chord. This is another chord in an inversion. I'll teach you that later on, but you only have 2 options on that, and one's more common than the others. And that way you always have this connector between the basic 6 to 1 move. But let's say you were trying to figure out this song, and you didn't know anything about inversions, you didn't know this voicing, you can't even hear that chord. Don't worry about it. That's just a connector. Just get the basics of... You can play in the band with that and just stay out of the way while the bass player moves up there, or even... Boom. See, I'm changing chords. Keep that in mind. You don't need to know every single chord in the song to start with. And you know what this reminds me of is... I've had students that come in, they're going to play in a jazz band or they're doing shows or something like that. And so the chart, you got all these chords and it's every beat a different chord and all these alterations and da-da-da, you know. First thing I teach them, okay, you don't have to play every single chord. You got to punctuate the important parts. And you don't have to play all those extensions. Maybe you need to stay out of the way of those and use other structures. But you have to know how to interpret a chord chart written for guitar in a jazz situation or show thing. Same thing's applying here. Less is more. Just get the basic foundation, and then you can put all that other stuff in as you go. I'm going to play another bichordal vamp, and we'll talk about what it is. Here we go. Figure this one out. What did you come up with? I played an A and an F sharp minor. Okay, so let's analyze it. And also the rhythm is just 1, 2, and 3. It's that relaxed sailboat kind of thing. You know, you're not going crazy, you're just playing something nice and smooth. And also, for guitar players, I mean, I assume you're a guitar player, you're looking at a guitar video. Always allow yourself time to change the chords. If you go, that's one of the no-nos in guitar playing. It's what I hear, and it makes me cringe. I call it the of guitar playing. I talked about it in my course, Solid Strumming, and a few other ones. If every other word I said was, you would find that quite annoying, right? Well, it's annoying when a guitar player plays these open strings in between the chord changes because they generally don't even fit and they sound terrible, and it shows that they don't really know how to not play. What do I mean by that? If the groove is 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2. Now I'm not pushing a chord and playing it on the and of 4. I don't have to play on the and of 4. So here's another principle. If you're playing a couple of chords, or any 2 chords, you're on a chord and you got an upcoming chord. Give yourself time to get to the new chord. And generally that simply means don't play the and of the beat right before your chord change. Watch my right hand. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Notice I'm eliminating, I'm deleting that upstroke. Now watch the other hand. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. I've got plenty of time to change chords. And I've already conveyed this straight 8th rhythm, so you don't even miss that and on the and of 4. Keep that in mind. All right, so there's our progression. We've talked about the rhythm and how to execute it. Let's analyze it. I've got a major chord and I've got a minor chord 3 frets lower. That interval is called a minor third. Now, we already did some of these. It's a 1-6, right? 1-6, 1-6. That's the only possible analysis, right? No. As a matter of fact, here's how it works out. If you look at chart number 1, we already said the 1 chord could be viewed as a 8 chord, right? So if you go down a third, you've got 6. It's leapfrog, every other number, right? So indeed, this could be a 1 to a 6 in the key of A. But every place that you have a major chord, here's another principle. Every place you have a major chord, which is 1, 4, and 5, you always have a minor chord 3 frets lower. So this could be a 1, 6 in the key of A. It could be a 4, 2 in the key of E. It could be a 5, 3 in the key of D. Now, don't let your head explode. It's only 3 options. And I'll help you out. This wouldn't be a 5, 3 unless I went somewhere else. You wouldn't stay on that 3 chord for long periods of time. The 3 chord's a little weak. So what do I need to do to make this sound like the title of this particular lesson segment? Because this is titled as a 4-2 move, right? I need to throw in another piece of the puzzle, so I would perhaps do this one. See what I just did? I went, okay, that's a 1, right? Well, watch what's going to happen. There's my F sharp minor. Okay, now I go to an E chord. Now up to this point I could still be in the key of A, but then I go to the D chord. So wait a minute, all those are in the key of A, so indeed it's a 1, 6, 5, 4. What do I need to do to make it sound like a 4-2? I've got to play a chord that's in the key of what? The key of E. Well, the E, that worked, but the problem was that it was also in the key of A. The D, that's not in the key of E. So here's what I have to do. As soon as I hit that B chord, you see I'm in the key of E major. Now, I'm rattling this off, and I understand that you probably don't have these chords all memorized. Remember my little sales pitch about learning your theory. Memorize your diatonic triads. Simply means this. Take 1 key a week or 1 every 2 weeks. I mean, seriously, you've got some wits about you. It's not going to take you forever to memorize the following. Let's say I was studying the key of A. I'd learned that A is the 1 chord, B minor is the 2 chord, C sharp minor is the 3 chord, G, and so on. And I just keep playing it and drilling it, playing it and drilling it every day. Not for 5 hours a day, for maybe 10 minutes or 2 minutes every day I would do that. And I would think about it when I wasn't with the guitar. And I'd try to hear it, and I'd see it on the neck. I promise you, if you did that in a week or in 2 weeks, you would know that stone cold. Then you want to know the isolated chords, because when you start looking at these progressions, you have to analyze it from different angles. You have to know that, well, this E chord could be the 5 chord in the key of A, it could be the 1 chord in the key of E, blah, blah, blah. And it's, again, you're only getting 3 options. The major chord could be a 1, 4, 5, the minor could be a 2, 3, 6. So it's not like I'm giving you, quantum physics here. All right, I've talked a little bit and admonished you a little bit and encouraged you a little bit maybe. So learn your diatonic triads. There's another way to look at this progression. If I have a major chord and the minor 3 frets lower, I could have been in the key of D, right? See how I inserted the G, which is the 4, and then I hit that D chord. The reason you have these common chords is because, let's look at the circle of fifths. I don't know if you know anything about circle of fifths, but it's like a clock. So 12 o'clock position is the key of C. Go to the 1 o'clock position, you're in the key of G. And every time you go to the next number on your clock, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's another key, right? And each time you do that, you're adding a new sharp as you go clockwise. Well, if you add one new sharp, that means only one of the 7 notes is changing, so you always have 6 common tones between any 2 adjacent keys. Therefore, you have these common chords. And the cool thing about this, as you start doing composition and just writing tunes, you can use a pivot chord to go to another key, which is a really nice sound. All right, I'm kind of going beyond the scope of basic ear training here, but I'm also showing you where this will take you. And knowing the ambiguity of some of these progressions, just know it, study it. Here's the question. Rhythmically, it was 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4. Notice that backbeat. 1, 2, and 3 and 4. So I sprinkled in just a little bit of 16ths there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, I'm giving myself time to change chords. What key am I in? First off, what are the chords? G minor and B flat. Well, if the G minor was a 2 chord, the B flat would be a 4 chord in the key of F, right? But here we have another one's ambiguous situations, because that G minor and that B flat could be a 6-1 in the key of B flat. And then you've got another option, right? So what are you going to add to maybe make it sound like a 2-4? Here's a possibility. So I throw in a C. That helps it sound like I'm in the key of F, right? All right, I could have done this. Didn't sound like F was home base. It's because both the key of B flat and the key of F have an F chord in them. So do you see, it's about the duration, it's the way you play it. This is the kind of thing that you just have to play a lot of tunes and experience it and make the call. That's why that C is stronger than the F at defining one key or the other. Yet the street key is G minor. You clearly hear that because I could end on the G minor, but I could also go. B flat. Test the waters. Go through and play it and end on different chords in your little vamp that you're working on so that you are listening. You know, it's all about listening. And you make a call. You say, well, what if I end on that chord? What do I feel? If I end on that chord, what do I feel? This is critical. This is ear training. Ear training isn't just reacting to something you hear. It's pre-hearing. That's your goal. Okay, figure this one out. What did I play? D and A minor. Let's talk about the rhythm. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and. So we're pushing that A minor chord. We're playing it on the and. I'm going to slow it down. Watch my picking. 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4. Notice I put that slap, that palm slap, for my backbeat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And notice how I open it up and don't play a whole lot in the latter part of the measure. Don't feel compelled to have to go. It's so opaque. You're not leaving any space for the music to breathe, for other instruments to come to the forefront. And just silence is golden. There's a lot to be said for not talking, playing. Now I'm going to play a chord progression that involves 3 different chords. I want you to figure out all 3. Here we go. What'd you come up with? Was it A, F sharp minor, and E? You clearly should have heard that it goes down, so I would categorize this as high, middle, low in terms of pitch levels. And I heard major, then I heard a minor that was lower, and then I heard a major below that. And then in terms of intervals, if the A is 8, the F sharp was a 6, the E was the 5. So again, you can connect the dots. Da, 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 da. So da, 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 da. There's my 1 chord, 6 chord, 5 chord, right? Now this could also be another progression. I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to make you sweat this one out. It could also be in another key. It doesn't have to be in the key of A. So do a little research on that and see what you come up with. In terms of rhythm, you can hear I'm putting staccato in there. I'm pumping the 8th notes. It's driving, but it's not over the top. I'm pushing some of the chords, and I think I played it a few different little ways. You know, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Experiment with playing chord changes that occur on the number, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, or also on the ands of those numbers. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's really cookie cutter, kind of blasé. Just by pushing a chord, which means playing it on the and, it really lends a lot to the music. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And notice I'm even on the A. Instead of, if you just go 1 and 2, 3 and 4, that's not particularly exciting, but 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And you might want to practice doing it. Mute it on the downstroke, or maybe play a palm muted bass note. Oh, more of that reggae thing going on, right? Or polkas, country, all kinds of nice music. Before I give you a new question, what'd you come up with for the little quiz that I asked you for the previous progression? And we had the, I told you it could be in another key. We were looking at it as a 1, 6, 5 in the key of A, but it could also be a 4, 2, 1 in the key of E. So just checking to see if you work to get your bonus points for the grade period this week. Now, all right, I want you to play this one. This is pretty straightforward. Rhythmically, I was back in that 6/8 feel or the triplet feel. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I was using all downstrokes for the most part. Always start there, because that gives you that grid work and you drop the chords in. What I want to talk about now is that you're focusing on the bass line, probably. You should be. And if you have two different notes, you only have two possibilities. Either you're going from a lower to a higher or a higher to a lower note. Logical? Only got two options. And you want to be able to hear a move either way, meaning this. Let's say I had played that progression this way. If I had gone, you would have heard the bass line as 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice how I sang up. I went 1, 2, 3. Remember, use your major scale to connect the dots. You heard it go from 1 up to 3, then obviously up a half step to the 4. But I didn't play it that way. I played it like this. I went from the 1 down to the 3. That's a different interval, right? Even though it's the same note, when you go down an octave, it's going to sound different. My point being, make sure that you practice playing each of these little building block progressions, where your bass line goes up or where it goes down. Experiment with that. I've given you the tools, and that'll help you hear everything in a very complete manner. You won't get fooled. You can get fooled when it goes down if you're used to always hearing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've got to be able to hear the interval going to a 1 to a 6 or 1 to a 3, either way, any of the numbers. So it's important. And I was just playing folk chords. And we're going to talk later on, not right now, but this chord. I'm going to stay on that E minor. Boy, it's got to go somewhere. Do you see why I say the 3 chord is weak? It's not the kind of chord you're going to park on and stay on for a long period of time. Any of the other chords, the 1, the 2, the 4, the 5, and the 6, they can be a street key. The only time a 3 chord would be a street key would be if you're playing flamenco music, which is a whole different thing. We don't need to worry about that right now. I'm going to give you a question now, and I'm going to do something to my sound which might make it a little harder to hear, but this is a common sound for guitar parts. Here we go. Figure this one out. Short and sweet. Did you hear a minor chord, a major chord, and a major chord going high, middle, low in terms of the pitch architecture? D minor, C, B flat. The 6, the 5, and the 4 chords in various orders are one of the most common tools in pop music and have been for decades. Make sure you learn lots of songs and you analyze them. If you just take this course, ear training that I'm giving you, and just do the exercises, you're really going to miss out. You're not going to know how to apply this stuff. The real secret is to learn lots of songs, and not just learn them and be able to play them, but analyze them. Put them in numbers so you see the patterns. If you don't, you might as well tune me out right now, because this isn't going to really help you. But if you learn how to analyze songs, and it's not that hard if you memorize your scales, after you learn a few songs, you start to see the patterns, because we play an instrument that has patterns. So gee, let me look at this. I've got a minor chord, and I'm a major chord, a whole step lower, major chord, a whole step. Oh, and since I'm going minor, major, major, that could only be a 6-5-4, because look at here. I see it. Oh, okay. If I practice those things that Carlton said to do, playing those chords, the 6 diatonic triad, starting on the 6th string as the 1, or starting on the 5th string, you then would see the patterns. Which, by the way, let's put it on the other string. It's the same thing, I just have a little different voicing, right? I can add a note on top. And that way I have a pattern. If I saw this, and right away I can just hear it. That's a 6-5-4. We're going to play around with this 6-5-4 and change the order a little bit because it's such an important move for music. Question 1A. And question 1B. Figure this out. It sounded a lot like our previous lesson, right? It's because we're still using the 6, the 5, and the 4, but the order was a little different. D minor, B flat, C. Now, up to this point, I've had you listening to what? The bass line. Because I've been playing chords that had the root in the bass. But there are a couple other things that happen. Do you remember when I played this thing? I said, I was in C, so and I played that connector between the 6 and the 1 chords. I said, don't worry about it. We'll get to it later on. I still had this bass line that was scalar, a linear move, and it connected the dots very well. But what about my little quiz just then on example 1B, or question 1B? I played this. What did I keep playing in the bass? If I had just done this, are there any chords taking place? Any changes? No. All you hear is a D bass note. But I'm still playing a 6-4-5 because I'm playing D minor, B flat, C. There are a lot of different ways you could do it. Listen to this. The difference. Another common technique is a pedal tone in the bass, where you keep that same note and you're moving the chords on top. That's slash chords, B flat over D, C over D. The numerator is just like a fraction. The numerator is the chord, the denominator is the bass note. And it'll throw you for a loop because what you're used to hearing the bass note as clearly defining the root of the chord, right? But in this case, it doesn't. It could be another component in the chord. It could be an extension. I mean, a lot of different things that can happen. So I want you to make sure you can play both of these. These you shouldn't have any problem with. It's just fifth string rooted chords, right? D minor, B flat, C. And then what you're going to do is you're going to play just the top 3 strings of those chords. But you're like, well, wait a minute. I wasn't playing this note. Well, it comes from your A form. So do you see it? When you play this B flat chord like this, it's really the A chord form out of the cage system with the capo. So you could just play, and that would give you the B flat and the C. And I want you to watch my fingering. Here's the D minor. Now I'm going to slide down to first position and just add my 4th finger. I'm not going to pick up my 2nd finger because then all I have to do is move 1 finger. Let's move this to another key. My chords are A minor, F, and G. It's still a 6-4-5, but this time I'm in the key of C. But I'm going to pedal that 6 in the bass. So here's how I'm going to label this information. 6 minor, 4 over 6, 5 over 6. Now, if you're lost right now, maybe you need to hit the pause button and go back and study chart number 1. Go to the C major scale, learn that 1, 4, and 5 are major, 2, 3, and 6 are minor, and then learn the 7 notes in terms of numbers. If I've got an A in the bass all the time, then that's a 6 in the bass, right? So I've got an A minor, which is a 6 chord. Then I've got an F chord over an A bass. Isn't that a 4 chord over a 6 bass? A G over an A. Now, there are a lot of different ways you could voice this because you've got inversions and things, but I just want to show you a couple of common moves. Because as guitarists, we like using open strings. And those two keys lent themselves to that pedal open string for a bass note. Okay, I'm going to play something that if I had $1 or if I had a nickel for every song that used this progression, I wouldn't be here. I'd be somewhere else. Figure that one out. The rhythm is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's also the triplet. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1, 1 triplet, 2 triplets. So you got that 60s, 50s vibe, right? Sounds like doo-wop stuff. I'm in the key of E. Now notice I'm using a different form. I'm playing a C form instead of an A form. I can do either one. I go down to the 6 chord. Well, what's between 8 and 6? The number 7. You've heard that. All these old tunes like... Then I went to the 4 and then the 5. So it's a 1, 6, 4, 5. You want to learn to hear bass lines. I've talked about listening to the drums. I've talked about listening to the chords and how things are voiced, whether major or minor. All these things. But the bass line, I'm just going to use my descending major scale. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you notice how that bass line just weaves and connects the dots between this 1, 6, and 4, 5 progression. Again, this is a very standard progression. Make sure you learn it. Practice it in a lot of different styles and get it in a lot of different keys under your fingers. I'm going to play the same thing except for one chord. So I just gave you a big clue. So you already got 3 pieces of the puzzle. Figure out that other chord. Sounded almost the same, didn't it? But not exactly. Well, do you remember me explaining about every other triad having 2 common tones? Your progression in the previous example was 1, 6, 4, 5, right? And do you remember way back when I said every one of your major chords, the 1, 4, and the 5 chords, have a minor chord 3 frets lower, and that's every other degree of the scale, so you have 2 common tones, so they substitute. So all we did here is we went 1, 6, but instead of going to the 4, I went to the 2, and then I went to the 5. These 2 progressions, the 1, 6, 4, 5, and the 1, 6, 2, 5, are so common. I mean, they form so much in all styles. I got rhythm. That's the rhythm changes. And now you can play. Now there, it sounded jazzy because I still played a 1, 6, 2, 5, but I simply extended the chords. In Volume 3 of ear training, we're going to talk about how to hear these extensions, but the foundation is what you're learning now, whether they're either major or minor in tonality. Make sure you master these 2 progressions, the 1, 6, 4, 5 and the 1, 6, 2, 5. Okay, figure out this one. We got 3 different chords. Here we go. Here's what we have. We're in the key of F, 5, and then 3, 4. Notice how I'm laying it out on the guitar. I could have done it like this. Or I could have done it this way. And obviously there are a lot of different ways I could lay it out, but I just want you to experiment with putting all 3 chords on either the 5th string or on the 6th string, or combine your 2 approaches. I'm going to play 4 chords, figure out what key I'm in, the rhythm, just like we've been doing. Here we go. Straight 8th feel, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? Key of A, 1, 6, 3, 4. And here I'm pushing every other chord. 1, 2, and 3 and 4, and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4, and 2. There's a situation where that 3 chord leads you up to the 4 chord. It's really a nice move. I'm going to play 4 chords, figure out the key, all the above. Did you hear how I stayed in the same key as our previous example? Because if you maintain your tonal memory, you'd remember, oh, in the previous, we were in the key of A, and you'd hear that. And then when I played this new example for you to figure out, you'd say, oh, it's the same key. Generally, I've been changing keys just to get you to where you're not just hearing one key all the time. So make sure you practice these progressions all in one key, and then start jumping around to different keys. That's obviously a little more difficult because you're having to hear different pitch levels. But anyway, what did I play? 1, 4, 2, 5. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. So a good layout would be 6th string, 5th string root, 6th string, 5th string root. Figure this one out. Sounded like a lot of tunes, didn't it? Here's a case where you hear the first chord and then it goes down. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so it sounds like a 4 to a 1, and then, okay, there's my 5, right? Your street key is D. It sounds quite stable there. but you're theoretically in the key of G. Now we could change it. Notice how the G functions quite well as our street key, meaning it sounds quite stable. I'm going to play 4 chords, figure it out. What key was I in? Change keys, key of A flat, right? Not a real common guitar key, but do you want to be a guitarist who happens to play music? You want to be a musician who happens to play guitar. Make sure you learn all those keys that you'd only play in probably if you're playing with a horn player. It's important. I find that guitarists tend to just want to stay in key of C, G, D, A, E, you know. It's real limiting. Learn the other keys. Also, I was playing all these extensions and stuff that could disguise what chord, right? Well, no, not really, because remember, it's either a major or a minor chord. I'm starting off, I'm in A flat, then I go to the 5 chord, 6, to the 4. Now you're wondering, well, I'd like to know all those chords. That's you. Say, okay, I'm going to show you. In Volume 3 of ear training, like I said earlier, I'm going to show you how to know what extensions are available based on what chord you're on. So for now, you just want to go like... Sounds quite generic, doesn't it? 1, 5, 6, 4. Here's your final question for Volume 2 of ear training. I'm in the key of F sharp. I start with a B chord, which is the 4. Then I go to an A sharp minor, which is a 3, and a G sharp minor, which is a 2. Now, this is not a particularly strong progression. The middle chord that's again, that 3 chord, right? It depends how you play it. But the point is, I want you to learn to hear it, whether it's strong or weak. That way you're equipped that if you're trying to figure out a song, and how can I put this? It could have had a better choice for the duration of a chord or the quality of the chord or the voicing. You'll still know what it is. Make sure you go through everything I've shown you here, play through different keys, play it on different string groups, play it with different rhythmic feels, and what did I tell you? Learn lots of tunes and analyze them.